When Brawl Stars first came out, there were 15 brawlers and only 4 rarities. You had 7 common brawlers, 4 rare brawlers, 2 epic brawlers, and 2 legendary brawlers, and this really made sense for the most part as there were a lot more lower rarity brawlers than the higher rarity ones. But fast forward to today, and there are 84 different brawlers split between 5 different rarities, and these just don't seem to make any sense anymore. And today we're just going to be going over how brawler rarities have seemingly lost their meaning over the years, as well as how removing rarities entirely could possibly fix some of the biggest problems. So the first thing we really have to go over is just the fact that the rarities don't actually determine the strength of the brawlers. This is already something that is pretty backwards from most other games, and we'll talk more about this a little later on in the video. But as for what the rarity means in Brawl Stars, well, according to Supercell, it is based off of how complex and hard to learn the brawler is. This means that the lower rarity brawlers are supposed to be more simpler than the higher rarity ones, and we can see this. However, that part also has kind of been losing a bit of meaning, but we'll talk more about it later in the video. Outside of that, the other thing that the rarities represent is just how hard it is to unlock a brawler of that rarity. It really is just harder to unlock the higher rarity brawlers, and you can see this in the Star Road where you basically get the lower rarity brawlers out of the way pretty quickly before moving up to the higher rarity ones. And now you even have brawlers at epic rarity or higher being available to purchase with real money for early access, with the higher rarities just costing more money. And we have also seen just an increase in the number of higher rarity brawlers being added, with mythic really just being the fastest growing one, and it just took the spot as the rarity with the most brawlers after the most recent Brawl talk. They make up well over half of the brawlers in the game, and that just shouldn't be a thing when it comes to rarities in general, since there is no reason for higher rarities to have more brawlers than the lower rarities. Even Clash Royale is kind of balanced in that way, as there is a severe drop off with the number of legendary and champion cards versus the other 3, though it does still have a similar problem as the first 3 rarities are more or less equal with the number of cards in each of them. But anyways, back to Brawl Stars. In this game, the rarities are just very top heavy, with the more rare and exclusive rarities just not being all that rare and exclusive, as they make up a majority of the brawlers. The only main rarity you can say that truly feels special is the legendary rarity, and I suppose that makes sense because there aren't a ton of legendary brawlers and they are just harder to get and a lot more rare. But through a similar logic, there are less rare and super rare brawlers than the legendary ones, meaning they should technically be harder to get, but they are actually the easiest to get, and this just makes everything so much weirder. This really just shows how the rarities in Brawl Stars don't even seem to matter all that much, because you have some rare brawlers that heavily outclass some legendary ones, and this does just go to show how rarities have no effect on the strength of a brawler. Right now, it seems like the only significance that the brawler rarities have is just with unlocking the brawler, and this is kind of where the problem lies and where things take a bit of a darker turn. It can be argued that Supercell is only adding in the higher rarity brawlers because they will just make the game more money, and there are quite a few different things to consider when it comes to that. First of all, higher rarity brawlers tend to just bring in more hype to the game because most people still see higher rarities as better and more special, even though the rarity isn't supposed to determine the strength of a brawler. But we have also seen a bit of a pattern when it comes to newer brawlers just being a little too good when they get added, and this could really just be to get people to buy the brawlers. Brawl Stars would respond to this, and they say that they just make the brawlers slightly better than average upon release. However, literally no one believes this, and it is pretty obvious why. It is pretty clear to most people that brawlers are made quite a bit stronger upon release just so people will go out and buy them, and the higher the rarity means the higher the cost and more money to Supercell. This is really just basic business, and I suppose it makes sense, and it is smart from Supercell from a business perspective. However, it definitely does rub some players the wrong way, especially after they started making brawlers cost actual money for early access rather than just a challenge like it used to be. This definitely shows how the game is more profit driven, and they have just been making tens of millions of dollars every single month, and I'm sure the rarity situation plays a big role in that. But why can't Brawl Stars also just add in some lower rarity brawlers to help balance it out? I mean, it does seem like a pretty easy thing to do and an obvious solution to the problem of too many rarities. Well, this kind of just has the opposite reasons of what we just talked about. adding lower rarity brawlers wouldn't bring as much hype or money to the game, and there really would be no point in doing it because a lower rarity just wouldn't be special enough, and this is one of the main reasons as for why the rarities just don't really matter much anymore. It seems like the purpose of the rarities is only for the price of the brawlers now, and that is why we have just been seeing an increase in the number of higher rarity brawlers and pretty much nothing for the lower rarity ones, as it has been years since we got the last super rare brawler. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like a lot of the brawlers around epic, mythic, and legendary are starting to feel a little too similar when it comes to complexity, and there doesn't seem to be any clear line on why something is a certain rarity when it comes to the top rarities. I mean, with things like the star powers, gadgets, hypercharges, gears, and other similar things, a lot of brawlers are already pretty complex, and there's a lot to learn about them other than just their base mechanics, and pretty much all of those things didn't exist when Brawl Stars came out. So while back then the rarities would have made a lot of sense when it came to complexity, nowadays it doesn't matter as much because there isn't as big of a gap due to all the extra things that were added that affect the gameplay. There still is a bit of a difference, however it just isn't that big, and I'm not sure exactly how much longer they can keep this going for, because eventually there will be a point where it's hard to make a brawler a certain level of complexity, as most things would have been done already. This is definitely a problem that Brawl Stars will need to address, because now it just looks like the rarities serve no purpose and Brawl Stars is just using them in order to make more money. And I think that there is a good solution to this problem, and that is to just remove the rarities entirely. I know that this sounds like a massive deal, and it really does just sound crazy. However, if rarities mean nothing, then there is really no point in them being in the game. This would also give Supercell the opportunity to just add in a brand new progression system that is much more future proof, and hopefully also something that can be good for free to play players, as well as be good for the company as a whole to ensure they still make enough money in order to do the best work possible on the game. If you look at Clash of Clans, then that game clearly doesn't have any rarities, and it's all just normal troops and spells that simply have their own functions, and there isn't any sort of label that they have to carry, and it clearly works great in the game. Now, the unlocking for these troops and spells is obviously a bit different. However, I do think that the idea could be adopted successfully into Brawl Stars. It could be nice to just sort the brawlers by their class and have that be the thing that defines them rather than their rarity, because the class is just more relevant and is actually an indicator of what the brawler is about. However, I obviously do understand that this would be a massive change to make, and there would really need to be a lot of changes in order to make this work, since it seems like a lot of the game is based off of the brawler rarities. But I do think that this could be really worth looking into, because it is also future proof, as now the problem of there being too many brawlers in certain rarities would just disappear. But overall, we have just seen how the rarities don't really seem to matter much anymore for the brawlers, and now it's mainly a vanity thing that is just used to make the game more money, and that is why removing the rarities overall could be a good way to solve this problem. But that's also it for this video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.